Greetings, Earthlings and burn it downers. Are we burners? Can I call y'all burners? We're going to work on that. Let's not go with burners just now. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Burn It Down with Kim Brown. I'm so happy and excited to see y'all smiling, glowing faces up in the place. Today's program, we're all we got, baby. Why the rise of mutual aid organizations is more critical and more urgent than ever, as everyone has been talking about today. Over the weekend, Congress did agree on a stimulus relief package, somewhat to the tune of $900 billion, equating to $600 direct payment checks for most folks. Now, here we are at the end of the year, out of a very trying, historically hugely hard fucking year, between a pandemic, between an economic crisis / collapse, and of course an inept response by the government level, both at the federal level and largely at the state level as well. So we know that $600 relief is not really helping most people, not in a significant way. But this is why mutual aid is so critical, y'all. And I'm sure you have mutual aid organizations in your town and in your city that have been stepping up to sort of fill the void from where government and the private sector and corporations have largely failed working and non-working people, able-bodied and disabled people as well. So we're going to be featuring the work of 3 organizations today. And listen, this is not the last time that we're going to do this. Like, I want to hear from mutual aid organizations across this country about the work that you're doing, why your work is so critical as of now, and why your work is probably still going to be so needed as we finally exit the Trump years and go into the Biden administration, the early part of next year. So as most of y'all also know, really quick, this is the last show on the Real News Network. So if you've enjoyed Burn It Down with Kim Brown, and even prior to that, stir crazy, I need you to go over to the Burn It Down with Kim Brown YouTube channel and hit subscribe. Please, oh, please, oh, please. I'm so shocked at really how quickly we have almost reached 1,000 subscribers. I think we're like 100 and some change short of 1,000. So if y'all want to get me something for the holidays, you can get me a channel with 1,000 subscribers on it, because that would really mean a lot. We have some fantastic shows and guests planned for you in 2021. And I want to make sure that you are still in the place when we do our thing next year. But all that out of the way, it's time to get to the program. And the first place we're going to start today is out on the West Coast, the Pacific Northwest. We have been following you all, a region of the country that I don't think gets its proper shine for the amount of organizing and activism, just all about itness when it comes to engaging with the community and understanding the need for people to take priority, not only over profits, but over a lot of things. So today we're joined with Zoe Grieder. They are an organizer and member of the Tacoma Mutual Aid Collective. Zoe, is that accurate? Zoe, thank you so much for being here. And I'm so excited that you made the time. It was a lot of coordination to get you here, because the Tacoma Mutual Aid Collective has been so busy. So if you could start us off by, number one, giving us a little brief explainer as to what mutual aid is and what it is that your organization does.
So mutual aid on a kind of broad level is just people taking care of each other. It positions itself explicitly outside of the nonprofit industrial complex and outside of state services, with the understanding that those systems can't help the people that need it the most, that nonprofits, generally decisions are made by rich white people that don't talk to the people they're serving. And we know what the government does. So our work specifically, we're in Tacoma, which is about an hour outside Seattle. We do all kinds of things. Most recently, we've had a COVID grocery program since about 2 days into the shutdown. One of the things that we love so much about the work we do is that because we're not beholden to anyone, we can get a program off the ground in days if we have the energy for it. So that was one example of that. We do a lot of street outreach with folks living on the streets in Tacoma, providing supplies that other places will not give them. We hand out cigarettes, whatever people need. We most recently did a laundry day where we did over $2,000 worth of laundry at 6 different sites across the city. Got to help a ton of people. It was a really great experience. And we'll be doing that as well as our distribution days of supplies in January. We're all quarantining at the moment.
Well, Zoe, let me ask, because you mentioned something kind of interesting right there, that your organization will give out stuff that supplies to unhoused people or people who are in need that other organizations won't, like cigarettes, right? And that kind of sounds like a funny thing. Like, why would someone who is unhoused, why would you want to be giving them cigarettes if their needs are probably more urgent as relates to, food insecurity and, not proper shelter? But something like cigarettes is not a small thing if that is a part of an addiction or something that helps to soothe you in a time of great stress like this entire year, and especially for people who have been on the marginalized end of what's been happening with the pandemic. Talk to us about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so with the supplies like that, our basic belief behind all of that is that anything that housed people are allowed to enjoy. People with money, unhoused people deserve that too. Cigarettes, alcohol, whatever it is that gets you through the day when you have to be hypervigilant on the streets all day, trying to make sure nothing happens to you, nothing happens to your stuff, and just dealing with miserable weather, like dealing with interpersonal stuff that's going on in a camp. So we really try to make sure that we're serving people that are not getting the help they need, are not having access to resources because of not being able to enter the shelter system, which is extremely complicated in Washington now, not qualifying for tiny home or this or that because you're still an active drug user. Everyone deserves to be safe. Everyone deserves to be warm. And we also have been really working on shifting the discourse around houseless folks, the rhetoric. We had an incident a couple weeks ago where a camp that we work with, a housed neighbor of theirs, attacked their camp and specifically targeted Native women. And when some Black man tried to intervene, he was shot and murdered. And the city released him on $50,000 bail a couple days later. And the investigation is ongoing, but we know how that goes. So we've been raising money for them.
That's an incredible story. What was, do you know the victim's name offhand? Because I would absolutely like to try to explore this story, because that sounds horrific in a lot of ways.
Yeah. The man that was murdered, his first name is Patrick. I don't have his last name off the top of my head, but our social media did a lot of reporting around this. We assisted the camp with organizing a vigil the next day. But yeah, it's horrific. And after this happened and he was arrested for a couple days, more of his friends came by and were threatening the camp. We're the ones that got them into hotels so that they didn't have to do this. They're getting into housing. We got them connected with victim services through a nonprofit. The city didn't send anyone out to connect them with victim services. But yeah, so one woman had her arm broken and another was given a concussion. And the city is completely failing. And we know that this rhetoric does not go away. People feel this way. People will be emboldened by this. And so trying to shift the narrative around what houseless people do to an area, what living with them is like, is really important. I've personally been seeing over the last couple of years a lot of folks that were maybe disengaged get more involved and take more note of stories like these. But yeah, and there are a number of mutual aid groups in Tacoma, and we all kind of were able to rally around this and get folks what they need, get tents replaced when they were destroyed. Yeah.
Well, I want us to take a look at a package from, I believe it's Q13 out there in Tacoma. This story is from November. And just to give people an idea, I mean, first of all, if you watch Burning Down with Kim Brown, then you know that we've been talking about the eviction crisis for some time. But it's so, people are still in such precarious situations. And I feel like this package from your community out in Tacoma helps to illustrate really how hard people are trying and yet how really fucked up everything is. Dwayne, can we look at that package, please?
If you lose one day, you've lost rent.
Alicia Wilson and her husband Willie have been struggling since the summer.
It's a family of four here.
We met them back in June. Unemployment helped them after losing their jobs, but a slow market has dragged on. Months later, even more bad news. Willie's daughter, 15-year-old September, is now at Children's in Tacoma. She was moved into the ICU today after being diagnosed with stage 3 cancer.
It feels like there's no end to it. You know what I mean? Now the doctor's saying my daughter will have cancer, and this treatment that she will take 36 months.
It's just another expense they cannot afford. But for the eviction moratorium, this family believes they would already be out on the street.
We still don't have any jobs.
Really, what we're doing is we're just kicking the can down the road.
Evan says while the moratorium gives renters some breathing room, he says he feels like he's running out of breath. He joined a suit filed by the Washington Business Properties Association challenging the moratorium. And he claims without relief, both renters and property owners will suffer.
But who's going to want to buy a property with a tenant who's not paying rent? So there just aren't, buyers.
This week, the Low Income Housing Institute opened a new tiny home village in Tacoma that can house 60. In the North Sound, empty commercial space is being considered by the city of Everett and the county for expanded homeless shelters. Officials at Soto's shelters unveiling agree the homeless population will only rise soon.
We have every reason to believe that over the course of this pandemic, the way that the economy is affecting people, the way that the illness is affecting, we have every reason to believe that we'll have more people experiencing homelessness as a result of these combined crises.
But Willie's focus has turned to his daughter's cancer and also worries his family may be on the street before long.
We thought everything was going well, stay home, stay out of the pandemic, keep yourself clean. All these things we've been doing, we've just been a family of four, and we've just been doing everything that's told us to do, and we've been looking for jobs. It's just that now our plate is full.
Steve Kiggins, Q13 News.
Well, Governor Inslee's office shared a statement with us this afternoon defending the eviction moratorium, saying it has kept more people from being forced onto the streets. His moratorium has been extended twice already this year, and it does expire at the end of January.
Zoe, I wanted to ask you about your opinion regarding the local response to these, twin and now seemingly maybe even triplet pandemics or crises that we're dealing with, in addition to the virus and the eviction crisis that's looming there. We heard, from that report, even though from November, the moratorium on evictions is set to expire at the end of January in Washington state. Talk to me about the state response to all of this and how you are seeing it impact people in your community who have been made vulnerable either through unemployment, like that couple in the video we just saw, or even a medical emergency. Describe to me what's been happening in Tacoma.
So the biggest thing I would say is, so sorry, I lost my thought.
Okay.
One of the most influential things that's been happening, I would just say generally on people's stress levels, is Inslee has waited to extend every single deadline that he's done within a week of it expiring, as opposed to just saying, hey, like 6 months, we're good, which I know would take a load mentally off of so many people. Unemployment has been all over the place. I know people that are 2 months behind in their payments. It's a mess. We get messages from people every day talking about, being drained from this and not being able to afford to fix their car to keep working, being, 6 months behind on rent and ready to be kicked out at any moment. I would like to highlight a specific program. Tacoma Pro Bono has a program where they will help with negotiations between renters and landlords because of the crisis, the pandemic and everything. And so there are some great organizations stepping up to fill those gaps, but they are not being funded by the government. They're being funded by the community, and people really stepping up and feeling responsible.
That's I mean, amazing, good news to hear that people have been stepping up and helping their neighbors, but it is shameful that the assistance is not coming from the state, not coming from the feds, and it doesn't appear to be coming.
If $600.
I mean, what's the average standard rent in Tacoma? Let's even say for a studio or for an efficiency. Like I'm imagining it's probably a little bit more than $600.
It is, yeah. $600 might be possible for a room for a month, but a studio is closer to $900 to $1,200. And the gentrification that's happening to Hilltop, which is the historically Black neighborhood that we primarily work in, is off to the races. I recently saw like a new development and looked it up. It used to be Section 8 housing, and now it was like $1,600 for a 1-bedroom, I think. More than that, people are getting forced out left and right. We're having an extension of our light rail through that neighborhood, and so developers are trying to buy up every last piece that they can. And, it's not just renters facing homelessness with all that. Homeowners are also getting forced out onto the streets. Everyone is affected by this.
So before we let you go, let me get your opinion from a policy perspective, from things that you have been witnessing in Tacoma over the past several months, and even before, right? Because we have been dealing with all of this inequality for generations. So 2020 just shone the big ass spotlight on the problems that already existed systemically in America, and just be like, voila, here it is. No, it's really fucked up. It was not just a little fucked up. It's really fucked up. What would you make policy recommendations? Like, seriously, if the government was willing to put the money in the appropriate places where we know it's needed, from what you have witnessed and observed, where would you direct this money to go? It's cute to bail out, airlines, and I'm not diminishing the fact that airline employees need help too, but
of course,
non-working and working people need help too. Damn it! So you're in charge of the allocation of Washington State's federal stimulus relief funds. Where are you putting that money?
Money, as much as policy, housing first is the only thing that works. And until we take away empty units from rich developers and put houseless people in them, nothing is going to change. We can fill gaps, but it is incredibly hard to make any progress when you're living on the street, when you're couch surfing, all of the, like, anything. And, you know, we've seen through study after study that when people get housed, they can improve all kinds of things so quickly. But if you're unhoused, and like an example I give a lot of people is like, maybe you need to call 211 to get connected to resources. To call 211, you have to have a working phone with minutes, a charger, and access to charge that. And that's just to call 211, where they give you a list of phone numbers to call other people. So the only, like, turn the money over to communities. We know how to help ourselves. We know how to help each other. Giving money to giant foundations with overhead so they can do an awareness campaign does nothing. Like, we need rent and mortgage relief. Nothing is going to improve until we get people out of these financial holes and into safe, secure housing.
And I think that is a brilliant place to both end our conversation and begin the conversation at the same time. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. People, if you are unhoused, everything else is exponentially more difficult about life, just having to maneuver things. So I think you're 100% right there, Zoe. But we're going to let you go. I know you guys are so busy, and I so appreciate you making time to talk about your mission. And I hope we can have you on again in the future, so people can become more aware of the needs of Tacoma, and that there are groups like yours that are out there that are helping people in Tacoma, Washington.
Thank you so much for having me, Kim.
Thank you. Zoe Grieder, organizer from the Tacoma Mutual Aid Collective. She's been joining us today from Tacoma, Washington. So thank you so much for Zoe. And like I said, guys, we're talking about mutual aid this show. Don't forget, go over to the Burn It Down with Kim Brown YouTube channel and subscribe. This is our last day on The Real News. It's very sad. It's so sad. But we are moving on to other things for 2021. So just a quick heads up there. So now we're going to move from the West Coast back to the East Coast. Actually, we're going to do it up for Brooklyn. Is Brooklyn in the house? Crown Heights specifically. Today, we are joined with Nitish Pahwa, who is a volunteer with the Crown Heights Mutual Aid Collective in Brooklyn, and is also a Brooklyn resident. Nitish, we appreciate you making some time today to talk to us about what's going on in your neighborhood, in your borough. So we appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate that.
So let's lead off. Can you explain to us what the Crown Heights Mutual Aid group is, why it was founded, and the kind of work and services that you provide for your neighborhood?
Absolutely. So we started back in March of this year, right when the pandemic started to really severely hit the US and New York especially. It was founded at first by some local DSA members within Brooklyn, although the group has no institutional affiliation with DSA or with any other political group. We started just as just to figure out, like, hey, like, a lot of our neighbors are going to be in need throughout this time, because a lot of people losing employment, a lot of people losing various benefits, rent coming up, and so on. So it's just like, how can we as neighbors help our neighbors? That's our core motto: neighbors helping neighbors. And so we've been, like I said, we've been in operation ever since then, consistently. We've been mostly helping neighbors with food. Like, we'll go to local supermarkets, groceries, bodegas, and get things from there that our neighbors need. We've also handed out, like, cash on certain occasions, like just little disbursements of cash if financial assistance for bills is preferred. We also have other units that are helping with, just providing general housing counsel with all like the laws and figuring out like the rents, moratoriums and whatnot, as well as education for, just getting people into what is mutual aid and how can it benefit this community.
Nitish, so talk to me about how the needs perhaps may have shifted with what the kind of services, or rather the urgency and the greatness of the need, because we know, months ago, New York was actually ground zero for this pandemic with the way the transmission was happening throughout the city, with the amount of people who tragically lost their lives to COVID-19 in New York City. New York has come a long way from where it was several months ago to where it is now. So what was that looking like? The amount of assistance and people seeking help from mutual aid organizations like the Crown Heights Mutual Aid Group to what it is now. How have your services perhaps changed some or been shifted?
Absolutely. So I would say that throughout our core mission and our core duties of, general, help with food insecurity, housing insecurity, financial insecurity have stayed the same throughout. But yeah, how we've shifted since the very beginning of this pandemic, at least we in particular have kind of narrowed our scope. We were originally delivering to people outside of Crown Heights as well, until that became unsustainable for us because we only had so many people helping out. And like at times, we're getting behind on getting back to people who called into our hotline and so on. So we kind of narrowed our focus to, okay, we're going to focus on, these parts of, Crown Heights specifically, but we work with other mutual aid groups, including West Brooklyn Waterfront Mutual Aid, including Greater Prospect Heights Mutual Aid, other, neighboring groups to, coordinate and help out neighbors who may, sort of overlap in those areas. And, we had a lot of requests, obviously, beginning in the spring and through the summer. It lessened definitely as things got a little bit better, as there was some, help from the government, as things were a little bit warmer outside, as things were less dour. But now that, the virus is resurging again, like we have this new stimulus, but it may not be enough for a lot of people. We're just going to be here to keep up doing our core duties, focus within Crown Heights and working with other mutual aid groups just to make sure that everyone gets the help they need.
I can only imagine in a high rent district like New York City, you hand your landlord a $600 check that you receive from stimulus. He's probably going to hand it right back to you. Like, what you want me to do with this? But Nitish, so I wanted to ask about the kind of people that have been seeking your assistance or trying to get help from other mutual aid groups in New York City. In terms of demographically, are these people largely elderly or perhaps disabled, not mobile, immunocompromised? I imagine there's even a great deal of people who are young and immunocompromised, perhaps outwardly, appear to be able-bodied, but not actually able to traverse the streets dealing with a raging pandemic, let alone catch public transportation or even, have the ability to go outside and do a lot of the things that they were doing pre-pandemic. So who has been calling your group seeking help?
Yeah, so, pretty much everything you just listed, the elderly, the immunocompromised, the people who otherwise just aren't able to get out and about. These are the people who've been calling us, just neighbors who live, whether they're neighbors who live like right down the block or up elsewhere. It's been a lot of people it's been a lot of parents too, especially parents who've needed help, like looking after their kids as their kids have stayed home with them with the whole schools debacle. Like, okay, I need these things for my kids because otherwise I'm spending all this other money on them, trying to keep them home and such. It's older people and middle-aged people. It's those who are sick or differently abled. It's even people who, like just the other day on the phone, I was talking with a contact tracer who, just has to stay inside all the time, even though he's otherwise, able to get out and about and get things for himself. He just, through the nature of his job, he just can't do it right now. So that's why he sought our help. And of course, we're happy to do it for him.
I wanted to ask about the response, the government response, in your opinion, how that has been handled in New York City, from Mayor Bill de Blasio to Governor Cuomo. We were covering a lot of the demonstrations that were happening in New York City over the summer, which were a lot, numerous, extremely well attended, but also very heavily policed. And there were even instances throughout the pandemic and when these protests were at their height, where these curfews were put into place, where the police would shut off entrances to subways and then detain people for violating the curfew. I wanted to ask, how has the city handled this pandemic in your opinion? Has the money been spent in areas where it has been most needed from your vantage point?
The city has not done a good job, I would not say. The state has not done a good job either. I would say that if New York has done anything well with regard to the pandemic response, it is because of mutual aid efforts and because of community-led efforts like the protests you were just mentioning. Over the summer, in fact, we helped with, organizing people to hit those protests, go march in the streets and warn people like, hey, this is the police situation going on. Please make sure to stay safe and so on. And we, put in new protocols for people who wanted to protest, but who still wanted to, help our neighbors with their needs and so on, while we were still figuring out how virus transmission would work in mass protests form. But yeah, I mean, the city, it's mostly just been, it's been, like you saw over the summer, it's been a ton of police crackdowns and just a lot of waffling from de Blasio and Cuomo, despite the repeal of 50A on just the role of the police and the specific injustices that many residents of Brooklyn are facing due to police issues. There are many neighbors I've talked to who just aren't able to, access their benefits or get turned down for them. And that's why, they, often come back to us because they sometimes just don't have another recourse. And, we do our best sometimes when something is a little beyond our reach. We'll try to refer to a city resource of sorts, but, a lot of it is very limited. Over, I think it was early summer, the city finally started distributing masks, but it was only 5 cotton masks, in a pack. And that was for every household. That's not okay, good. We're getting masks, but that's not going to last anybody,
Absolutely. And, the needs in New York are definitely distinct from other places. I mean, it's an expensive city to live, to eat, everything. Your overhead is just more. And so many people and communities of color have been displaced because of the rising rent situation there. And, when we have politicians who freely authorize billions and trillions of dollars for corporate relief, for corporate bailout, essentially socialism for corporations, but, crumbs for everybody else. I wanted to take a look at this clip from Kentucky Senator Rand Paul ranting. I don't know what the hell Rand Paul was doing on the floor of the Senate, but he was upset about the size of this stimulus relief package that Congress has passed, not quite signed by Donald Trump, unless the news has changed in the past several minutes. But I want us to take a listen about what Rand Paul had to say. And Nitish, I want to get your reaction to this after it's played. Dwayne, let's take a listen to Rand Paul there.
This bill is free money for everyone. Proponents don't care if you're fully employed or own your own house or own your own business. Free money for everyone, they cry. And yet, if free money were the answer, if money really grew on trees, why not give more free money? Why not give it out all the time? Why stop at $600 a person? Why not $1,000? Why not $2,000? maybe these new free money Republicans should join the Everybody Gets a Guaranteed Income caucus. Why not $20,000 a year for everybody? Why not $30,000? If we can print up money with impunity, why not do it?
Nitish, you know, the government doesn't have a problem printing money with impunity when it comes to funding the Pentagon or funding the Department of Defense or funding the Space Force or giving, you know, $33 million of this stimulus relief package to Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaidó. Like, I mean, there's a lot of shit that the government will freely spend money towards. But to Republicans and perhaps even some Democrats in Congress, the notion of a $1,200 relief stimulus direct payment to the average person in this country, or even $2,000, is just completely untenable. I mean, you live in the same city as Wall Street, the biggest recipients of socialist policy from the federal government. What is your take about Rand Paul's rant about we're just printing out free money, in effect saying that people, American taxpayers, do not deserve to have free money allotted towards them during a pandemic when many people have lost their jobs and access to their health care?
Well, I would say that when Rand Paul said, you know, why not 1,000? Why not 2,000? I also say, why not? You know, like, I think, you know, without getting too much into the economic nitty gritty of, you know, what we've seen in terms of government action over the past few months, like, we've seen that the government can leverage mass support for people and help their, you know, their general well-being, their general prosperity improve, even with just, you know, even just something as, you know, written in there as a $600 unemployment boost. And, you know, lots of people, you know, they always raise the specter of inflation and bloat and the deficit and whatever. And I mean, we just have not seen that this time around. We've not seen any of the sort of, you know, stagflation crises or anything that, you know, people still fearmong about from the 70s. Like, and that's for various reasons. But you know, while we have that system in place that's working, you know, for both the government and working for the people, like, yeah, no, give everybody more assistance, give everybody more, and importantly, you know, put it toward the right places. Like, the stimulus package does not have state and local aid, you know, because states are required to balance their budgets. You know, that's going to be pretty horrible for New York if New York has to resort to cutting transit services, you know, to make up for that shortfall. That's just completely unreasonable and untenable. The government has the money. It can provide the money to us, and it can definitely defund the Space Force or, you know, any other such, you know, actually useless bureaucratic operation to give to the people. And yeah, they should do it.
Nitish, you were about to go down a road, and I want us to keep going down that road. Like I asked my previous guest, Zoe from Tacoma, Washington, you know, if you were placed in charge of the stimulus relief funds allotted to New York City, given what you have observed and seen in terms of needs and shifting needs and exasperated needs of the people in your community, what is the best direction, in your opinion, in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, for federal relief funds to be spent?
Well, I think first and foremost, before we even get into the funds, I think there just needs to be either national, state, or more just straight up rent cancellation. You know, these moratoriums that are just building up rental debt for residents they're like, they may help some people stay in right now, but, you know, as long as they keep, you know, holding that specter of the bill being due at the end of however many months, that's going to, you know, be terrible for a lot of people. That rent should just be canceled. You know, and I think in terms of the actual money spending, it should expand, you know, welfare programs. It should expand food stamps. It should expand all of those things, because a lot of neighbors have just not been able to get the needed help from those programs like they should be. I think restaurants and bars and other places should be paid to stay closed. Their businesses and workers should get that financial relief because, this whole indoor dining thing, it's not safe. And while I'm glad New York has rolled it back, it should not do so again until we have actually stopped the spread. Money into transit, the MTA is facing this huge shortfall, and already the system is so laggard as it is, and so many people, including essential workers, including those of lesser means, depend on public transit. We need that for the community, so a lot of money should be earmarked toward that. And yeah, just more checks to the people. And if they own their business, if they own their own business, if they work, if they don't have either of those things, that's great. Give them more money directly.
Direct assistance is absolutely needed from the government, but in lieu of that happening, it's organizations like yourself and the Crown Heights Mutual Aid that is helping keeping people afloat in these times. And I thank you very much for the continued service that you've been doing for your neighborhood and for your community. We've been speaking with Nitish Pahwa. He's a volunteer with the Crown Heights Mutual Aid and is also a Brooklyn resident. Nitish, I appreciate you making some time to talk to us about what's happening in New York. And hopefully we can have you on again to give us updates on hopefully how things have improved in 2021. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, guys. So I think we are standing by, waiting for Destiny. Hopefully they're able to join us because the young folks at the Good Trouble Cooperative actually had a jail action. I think it was a jail action today. They said they had some action happening today. So hopefully Destiny's going to get on with us soon. But hold on. I'm seeing some things happening in the comments that I'm confused. Like, what is happening? Are y'all upset? Are y'all mad that this is not Burn It Down is not going to be on the Real News anymore? Is that the problem? Dwayne, talk to me real quick. Why is everybody upset? Are they upset? Hmm? Oh, good. Destiny's was standing by. Wonderful. Excellent. Dwayne said y'all in there talking shit. What's going on? Okay. Yes. Oh, okay, but they not mad at me though, right? That's all I give a shit about. Are y'all mad at me? Okay, no? Okay, great. We can keep on keeping on. Okay, thank you for that update, Dwayne. While we're waiting for Destiny to yeah. Can I read the comments or you want to tell me more comments? Okay. So, because I see the chatter in the Slack between Dwayne and Jean-Pierre, and I'm like, what the fuck is they talking about? Because I'm not watching the chat while the show is happening, y'all. My skill set ends at hosting. I can't host and see what the hell is going on in the chat. All right, .com is Randy Boy. Yeah, Rand Paul. Rand Paul better stop talking shit before we call his neighbor. We gonna call Rand Paul's neighbor and be like, Rand Paul neighbor, come deal with this motherfucker. Okay, is Randy Boy aware that the government ordered people to stay home because of the pandemic? What are people supposed to do? Sit at home and stare at a damn wall until they get evicted and starve to death? Yeah, no, y'all. I mean, the level of disconnection. I mean, this is not new, right? I mean, we're seeing disconnected comments coming from both Republican and Democrats. I mean, I got that Nancy Pelosi clip ready to go where Nancy says that the stimulus is sufficient. Bitch, where? Where? You tell me where the stimulus is sufficient. Because I can assure you in Prince George's County, $600 is not going very far. Baltimore, Maryland, $600 not going very far. Atlanta, Georgia, where else with the $600 not going very far? Dallas, Texas, where y'all at? Chicago, Detroit, how far is $600 going? Not very far at all. So these politicians had the audacity, and there's been so much brilliant social media, Twitter commentary about this. But basically, you know, these folks, number one, people like Rand Paul had the audacity to vote for the Trump tax cuts back in 2017, giving the most wealthy these amazing tax cuts, driving up the deficit. But of course, now that a Democrat has been elected, now the Republicans care about the deficit. They didn't give a shit about the deficits this entire 4 years, but now all of a sudden the deficits is a problem now that the people actually need help and assistance. And it's unbelievable. Like, I mean, I have to ask y'all, are we the lames? Like, is it us who is the lames? Like, we keep pointing the fingers at Congress, like, y'all suck. Y'all can't get anything, substantive passed. Y'all are out of touch, disconnected from the actual needs of the people. But perhaps it is us that is disconnected. And what I mean by that is, do we actually have to literally burn some shit down? And I'm not advocating for violence, not from this platform, but you understand what I'm saying. If we was in a different country, if this was France, or if this was someplace else where the people actually wielded more power than the government, they would turn shit over and it would be a big, major problem. But I did see a brilliant tweet. I wish I could accurately quote who was the author of this tweet, but I'm going to paraphrase him. And if you saw who was the original person of this tweet, please credit them appropriately. However, this person was musing that people who are observing the American situation from abroad regarding the extent of the pandemic, how much it is raging, and the lack of federal monetary assistance that the citizenry are actually receiving, they said, how come America is not burning shit down? Well, we live in a country where the police would not hesitate to shoot us down like animals, right? Like, sure, we can go out there and tear shit up and burn shit down, but the police are going to shoot to kill. And then all of a sudden, it's your name is a hashtag, right? So it kind of leaves us in a very difficult situation, in a rock and a hard place, so to speak. So I think there's a lot to be said about that. So wait. We got some more comments, Dwayne, or are we ready for Destiny? Wonderful. Okay. We'll save the comments till after we wrap our conversation with Destiny. But we are joined with Destiny Robinson, who is a member of the Good Trouble Cooperative based out of the DMV here in Washington, D.C. And Destiny, I know that you are probably coming from the action that your group was participating in today. So I appreciate you making some time for us. And thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So I want us to start off, if you could describe the mission of the Good Trouble Cooperative and why it was founded.
So essentially, the original mission of Good Trouble Co-op was to unite all of the groups together and kind of unify all of the voices to have a stronger voice to push our message further. So that was the original mission of the Good Trouble Cooperative, but what we've kind of turned it into is also providing mutual aid to our communities to serve the communities that we are fighting for. So the action that we had today, we actually had a food and wellness kit and gift event where we were able to provide over, I think, 250 meals, the same amount of wellness kits, and then I believe at least 50 gifts we were able to provide for the kids for the December holidays. So it's kind of turned into yes, we are demanding rights, but we are also advocating for and actively working for the people that we are advocating with.
So how Good Trouble Co-op came on my radar was I was following the DC protests when the Proud Boys and MAGA supporters and Klansmen came to DC in recent weeks and were basically just allowed to roam the streets, destroy property, assault residents, just abhorrent behavior made even more repugnant by the fact that Metropolitan Police, MPD, stood by and largely let a lot of these behaviors go unchecked and mostly unarrested. But the people who were arrested were people from around the area, people who stood up to defend the streets, people who were there in opposition to the white supremacists who were there. And I know that Good Trouble Co-op was doing jail support. So explain what jail support is for people who may not be familiar with the term and how it works.
So in DC specifically, there's no cash bond. So essentially people are usually, if they're arrested, they're usually released the next day from central booking, which is at 3rd and Indiana Northwest. So if you are able to come out on any day, that's where you can go. But that essentially jail support is just supporting our comrades that have been arrested for expressing their First Amendment rights. And most of the time, these people will be arrested for, felony riot charges, but released the next day and then released what they call no papered. And essentially being no papered means that no charges have been filed against you. So essentially what NPD Metropolitan Police Department has decided to do is essentially kidnap protesters and people expressing their First Amendment rights, hold them for, at least a night. I know some people have been held for at least 2 nights, and that's not even on the weekend. And they do that. And so jail support essentially is to give like some love to our comrades that have been arrested and like been through this system. And then also just to show them that like the community is behind them, the community supports them, and we support everything that they are doing because their goals, we have similar goals, and that is abolition.
When you describe it that way, how people are arrested, taken into custody, basically being held captive, basically being kidnapped off the street, exactly like you said. I mean, bond turns into a ransom at this point. Is that what it seems like? You're paying for the freedom of people who were simply expressing their First Amendment rights, that you have to pay a ransom to do that in the nation's capital, the home of democracy? What is your take on that, Destiny?
So thankfully, or not thankfully, I mean, it's, still a part of the system, but DC doesn't have cash bond. So there's or cash bail. So there's like no need to like really have a bail fund, thankfully. But we do still show up to support with like blankets, masks, food, because if you are vegetarian or if you have like different religious beliefs, then, like what like the general population might have, the prisons don't really, and the jails don't really accommodate for that. So as for me, I'll be, completely transparent. I was arrested in a large kettle of 41 people back in August, and I was no papered, same situation. I'm vegetarian, and I was not able to eat while I was in jail because they only had mystery meat sandwiches. And that's just like one experience of like many. And one of the reasons why we come out to support our comrades, because some of them, quite frankly, hadn't eaten. And thankfully, we don't have to pay a bail for them. But there's, just other ways that we use the money that, have we been in like Maryland or Virginia or somewhere else, that money that would have gone or could have gone towards the bail is just going towards like supporting them in other ways.
So I wanted to ask Destiny about the name, Good Trouble Cooperative. Obviously, we know that we lost Congressman John Lewis earlier this year. And in his youth, he was doing what he called good trouble, getting arrested in support and in favor of Black people receiving equal voting rights and a number of other things. So talk to me about what it means to cause good trouble in the 21st century for younger people of your generation. What does good trouble look like?
I think good trouble looks like not being complacent with the circumstances that we've been provided or that we've been, just situationized to, like we've just been under these circumstances for so long. And I think it's just, deciding that you don't want to be complacent with the circumstances that we've been living under and standing up and just making some good trouble and coming out in the streets, and whether it be, just giving food, because there have been times where the police have harassed us because we give free food to unhoused folks, and just things like that. Just come out and make some good trouble. It doesn't have to be, like protesting. Just do something good for the good of the people. That's what I think making good trouble is, and just standing up to the system and not being complacent.
Yes, I'm gonna take your advice, Destiny, because I mean, yes, that is basically what all of us need to do. Well, a lot of the things that we're dealing with obviously are systemic and structured, but sometimes it's because we accept them for as they are without having the imagination to know that no, these things can be changed, these bad things can be eradicated, and we can make a difference even in our own little way. But I wanted to thank you, Destiny, for making some time to speak with us today and sharing with us the work of the Good Trouble Co-op. We've been speaking with Destiny Robinson. She's a member of the Good Trouble Cooperative based out of Washington, D.C. Follow them on Twitter, gang, at Good Trouble Co-op. Destiny, thank you again for your time, and I appreciate you joining us. And hopefully we can have you on next year as we go along into the new year, because I'd be interested to hear about the kinds of work that Good Trouble is continuing to do throughout the city.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, guys, that is the program. Hold on. Let me go to the comments, because allegedly there are comments in the comments and y'all are pissed off and throwing chairs and shit. I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm trying to figure out what's exactly happened. Okay, wait, I already read that one from .com. Who else is in here mad? Paul X BSOG. They passed the stimulus. We got nothing. Start forming tenant unions. Paul, you know they're happening, man. I'm talking about the tenant unions, right? All across the country. And we're going to be talking about all of this in January on the Burn It Down with Kim Brown YouTube channel, where you should go subscribe, because we are really close to 1,000 subscribers. And don't front. Ain't no future in your fronting. Okay, so Livy Kulcha says, eliminate generational renters. Corporations should pay a living wage. Food, clothes, and shelter is a human right. I don't know how much longer both the American people and the federal government can sit here and pretend as though that somehow people are receiving all of our needs through the air, through osmosis, right? People are hungry. They are food insecure. They are housing insecure. They're going to become more housing insecure. We could have an unhoused tsunami at the end of this month, starting in next year. And the pandemic is fucking raging. Like, I'm so tired of seeing all this news about the vaccine. Y'all, the vaccine, we are a ways away from average people getting that vaccine. And in the meantime, these people don't want to stay home for the holidays. Like, they just want to go fly around the country and go to small gatherings and just put everyone at risk. I don't know if we're ever going to be free from COVID, at least not in the near future. And the last comment I'm going to read from E.G. Butler: the wealthy class, corporations, and governments need a good shakedown by the people. How are we describing shakedown? I mean, I see shakedown going in a variety of ways. But y'all, okay, so this is it. That's it. Today's the 22nd. It's 5:59. This is the last Burn It Down with Kim Brown on The Real News. I'd like to thank The Real News again for the opportunity for me to come here and do this and have guests who are regular people who are out here doing the actual work. This is the kind of stuff that I want to talk about. This is the kind of stuff I want to amplify. Look at Burn It Down with Kim Brown as rise of the regular person. I too, regular person who likes to talk and engage on a variety of things, politics included. But as we look forward to what the next iteration of Burn It Down with Kim Brown is going to include, it is going to include political discussions. But y'all, I used to do radio. Like, I used to interview your favorite rapper. You know, we might go back to that. You know, some comedians. I'm curious about what your takes are. Maybe some woke actors and actresses. Like, yeah, you feel where I'm going with this? We want to have some conversations. Still talk about societal issues. But we go get into, you know, some Black Twitter stuff too. And white people, you are free to observe and comment when appropriate. So Burn It Down with Kim Brown is still going to continue. Again, go to the YouTube channel and subscribe over there. Thank you, everyone, for your support. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Genevieve. Thank you, James. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you to Taya Graham and Steve and Janice, the OGs of OGs. And none of this would happen without Steve and Taya. Let me be very, very clear. Taya named the show. So shout out to Police Accountability Report. Shout out to everyone who's appeared on the show. Jessel Noor, Eddie Conway, Andrew Corkery, Steve Horn, Aman Azar. It's a long, long list. And I just appreciate y'all. So thank you. If you want to keep supporting Burn It Down with Kim Brown, subscribe, and we will have more information about how to do so. So thank you again to The Real News. And We will see y'all on the channel. So tune in, not Friday, because that's Christmas and we off. But we might have something up for you next week. But definitely January 1st, we're doing a whole show about the Haitian Revolution, Haitian independence. We're going to have our soup jumu ready to roll. Okay, I'm done talking. Have a great rest of your week, y'all. Happy holidays. Happy Hanukkah. Merry Christmas. Happy Kwanzaa. And if you're atheist and don't celebrate nothing, happy nothing. Have a good one. And I'll talk to y'all really, really soon. Thank you for the love. See y'all later. Goodbye. Bye-bye.